Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new ASUS ROG Ally X. And earlier this month, I was able to attend Computex in Taipei. I went hands-on with this at ASUS's headquarters. I was able to talk to their thermal engineers, their software engineers. We were able to take this thing apart, but it was kind of a controlled environment. But now I've got one ready to go, but there's still a few things that I can't test due to new BIOS updates coming very soon, like battery life and benchmarks. But we can still do a lot of other things with this unit right now, and keep an eye on the channel because I will have a ton of videos coming. Again, I've been really excited about the ROG Ally X due to the new upgrades. And if you're familiar with the ROG Ally, you know that one of the biggest upgrades here is that battery. Going from a 40 watt hour to an 80 watt hour battery is going to make a huge difference in battery life. And that's one of the major complaints about the original ROG Ally. But there's quite a bit more that's changed with the X. Now, this isn't an ROG Ally 2. This is kind of a mid-gen refresh. And straight out of the box, I do think that the X is more comfortable than the original. Now, speaking of that box, along with the ROG Ally X, you're going to get a 65 watt fast charger. This is basically the same charger that came with the original ROG Ally. But keep in mind, the new X can charge it up to 100 watts, and they do sell a 140 watt charger separately. And with that bigger battery, having that faster charger is really going to help out. But the last thing here in the box is something that a lot of people forget about. Right in the top, they actually give us a little cardboard stand. In fact, with the X, it's a dual stand. Looks like we can cut this in half, and we've got two of them, so we can prop this right up. Let's go ahead and boot this up for the first time. And by the way, I did plug the charger in one time just to kind of initiate everything. And yeah, I've got a little bit of setup to do. This is running Windows 11, but I think I can get it done pretty quickly. So just taking a look at the overall unit, you can really tell that this is an ROG Ally. We've got the same basic design, kind of the same shape here. They've actually rounded off the corners down where your palms go, so it's a lot more comfortable to hang on to. I mean, obviously, the battery is 100% bigger than the original ROG Ally, so they needed to add a little extra space here. We've got a new D-pad that we're definitely going to be testing in this video, new analog sticks, and around back they have moved those M keys inward a bit and made them a lot smaller, so, accidentally pressing them, which is something I always ran into, might not happen as much on the X. Up top here, we've got a totally new design, and you might notice that they've added two USB ports. We've got one USB 3.2 and one USB 4 port running at a 40 gig protocol, so plugging in your own Thunderbolt or USB 4 eGPU is going to be super easy. They did away with the XG port. We've also got our power button / fingerprint sensor, 3.5mm audio jack, micro SD card reader, and this is something I'll be testing extensively just to make sure everything's going okay with this. They've also added a totally new cooling system here, smaller fans, more airflow, and it actually keeps the device much cooler. We'll talk about this more in just a second, but if you take a look right in the middle, we've got a third vent, along with our volume rocker, power LED indicator, and our two USB ports. Again, one's 3.2, the other is USB 4. Give you a quick comparison between the original ROG Ally and the Ally X. As you can see, it does look a bit chunkier, and that's because we've got that much larger battery. They've also rounded those corners off so it doesn't dig into your palm while you're holding this for a long period of time. The X is coming in heavier than the original ROG Ally because of that much larger battery at 675 grams as opposed to 608 on the original, and it's a bit thicker at 0.97 inches, and the original was 0.84. But holding both of these, side by side, picking one up, putting the other one down, they really do feel like ROG Allies. Very similar. And speaking of the feel, personally, I think it's a lot more comfortable than the original ROG Ally, but I was never one to complain about, the sharper corners on the original. But with these new rounded corners, it kind of just hugs your palm. We can reach all of these buttons super easily, and we've got these new analog sticks which do feel a bit firmer, but I will admit I've been using my ROG Ally for quite some time now, so they're a little worn. These are rated at 5 million rotation cycles as opposed to the original Ally's 2.5 million. We can get to those linear triggers around back super easily, plenty of travel here, and when it comes to the new face buttons, they've got a bit more travel than the original, and they feature a flat dome shape. But one thing that I'm really excited about is the new D-pad. This is totally redesigned from the original. It's an 8-way dish style. I'm not a huge fan of dish style D-pads, but this does feel more like a traditional because we've got that traditional shape up top. And when it comes to the overall specs of the new ROG Ally X, this is actually powered by the same APU as the original, the AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme, 8 cores, 16 threads, up to 5.1 gigahertz. Personally, when this was announced, I was really hoping that we'd see a new APU here, but this is not an ROG Ally 2. This is more of a mid-gen refresh. So we've still got that RDNA 3 iGPU with 12 compute units up to 2700 megahertz, but they've majorly overhauled the RAM here, going up to 24 gigabytes, and now we have LPDDR5X at 7500 megahertz. The original has 6400 megahertz. We've also got an upgraded SSD going up to a 1 terabyte 2280 M.2 SSD, which is going to make it a lot cheaper to upgrade the storage in this. A UHS 2 micro SD card reader, Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2, 7-inch 120 Hz IPS display with FreeSync, so we've got a variable refresh rate display here, 100% sRGB with 500 nits of brightness. This is the same display we saw in the original. One USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C, which will support display out. We've also got that USB 4 40 gig port for eGPUs, fast storage, and that one also supports display out. 80 watt-hour battery with 100 watt PD fast charging, Windows 11 Home, Armoury Crate SE 1.5, which we will take a look at, a 6-axis gyro, and like I mentioned, this is coming in a bit heavier than the original at 678 grams. Really, one of the first things I wanted to show off here was this new version of Armoury Crate SE. This is going to come preloaded on the ROG Ally X, but keep in mind, it will be updated on the original ROG Ally. It's just going to take a little time. As you can see, they do look a bit different, but one of the main changes here is our game customization options. There's quite a bit that we can change here to kind of make it our own. And just to give you a better look at the updated Armoury Crate SE, I will plug this into my game capture. I'm just going to get a bit closer so we can see everything that's changed here. We've got a lot to go over. So I've just plugged into my game capture to make it a bit easier to see, and heading into Armoury Crate 1.5, you can see it's actually changed quite a bit. Now, one of the main changes here is our game section. As you can see, I've got a horizontal view here, but we can actually modify this, customize library, vertical view, which is going to give us that older Armoury Crate SE look. We've now got background images, and we can actually adjust the blur and brightness of these. So I think it does look a lot better like this, but we'll head into customize library. Personally, I like the horizontal. We can go top, center, bottom, cover size. You can make it enormous, make it super small if you want to. I'm going to go center here. Show game name. So this can be disabled. Show background image if you don't want that image to come up. And blur background image. So we can blur all the way out, have basically zero blur. And what this is doing is actually just blowing up our image here. Having it blurred, you're not going to see that it's just a smaller image blown up. I think it looks really good like this. Love the horizontal interface here. We can head into our game options, set a game profile, add to favorites. Let's see game info here. Gives us some information on the game. We can select different game art if we want to. So it's automatically going to download some for us. And if you weren't into the one that it automatically set for you, you can go with something totally different. You can also edit that game art. So when it comes to Armoury Crate SE 1.5, we've got a much different look here. And you can set this up in a list view if you want to. We could do this in the older one. But again, I really do like the way this is set up. Moving over to our settings, General, Performance, Calibration, Update Center. It's going to look exactly the same as the old one when it comes to the Update Center. Game Visual, we can adjust the screen. Lighting, obviously, we've got that RGB around the analog sticks we can control from here. Connection, keyboard shortcut, Aura Sync, audio. But I gotta say, my favorite section from any of these versions of Armoury Crate is Performance. And with the ROG Ally X, on battery, our performance modes have changed just a bit. For instance, performance mode on the older ROG Ally was 15 watts, and now will go up to 17 because we've got that larger battery, and usually when I'm just messing around with my ROG Ally, I'm at 18 watts anyway. Also got our turbo mode and manual. This is plugged into a proper charger, so we can go all the way up to that 53 watt boost. but we've got that SPL, which is the maximum sustained APU power limit of 30 watts still. System stats just give us some information on what's going on. Eco Assist, if you want to do extreme standby mode, it's on from the factory. You can always disable this if you want to. And of course, we've got our GPU settings. We now have 24 gigabytes of RAM, so basically what we can do here is allocate 8 gigs for the iGPU, 16 for the operating system. And of course, we've got the AMD Advanced Graphics options. You can optimize all, but we've got that super resolution. Fluid motion frames, which is something I've been messing around quite a bit with on the ROG Ally. Anti-lag, Radeon Boost, and we have Radeon Chill. In a future video, we will be testing out fluid motion frames, so keep an eye on the channel. We've also got our command center, gamepad mode, game profiles, FPS limit, real-time monitor, keyboard, show desktop. We can enable or disable our controller, AMD RSR, LED brightness, refresh rate, resolution, and so on and so on. We can actually add a few more from here. And one that I'm actually not seeing in this version is disabling the CPU boost on the ROG Ally X, but that can be fixed with an update. But yeah, so far with Armoury Crate SE 1.5, it's been working out really well on the ROG Ally X. Love the new look of it, got a lot of new features here, and I mean, it's kind of familiar, so if you've used Armoury Crate SE or even Armoury Crate, you'll be right at home with this, and they do have more options on the way, so that's something I'll be keeping an eye on with the X. And if you're on the original ROG Ally, Armoury Crate SE 1.5 is coming soon, so you'll be able to update directly from Armoury Crate. Moving over to some D-pad testing, and while we're here, we can see how Street Fighter 6 runs. I do like the new roll on this thing. It's an 8-way D-pad, but again, we've still got a dish style, so it may hinder some people in these fighting games. But you know, for platformers, it's pretty accurate. And by the way, with Street Fighter 6 here, I'm at 1080p, low, medium mix, 17-watt TDP. So with these uppercuts, did take me a little while to get used to it. I'm still missing a few here and there. That's where I usually run into issues with these dish-style D-pads, but it's definitely something I could get used to. I'm actually liking this one a lot more than the original D-pad. I wanted to test something a little lower end just to see where we're at with that TDP. This is Hades 2 1080p high, and I am at 120 Hertz. See this thing jump up to around 13 watts, and taking it down to 60, just locking this game at 60, we can run this flawlessly at an 8-watt TDP. Spiderman Miles Morales, and I don't have fluid motion frames on. I actually had to double check that just to be sure because we're getting some really good performance, but I am in performance mode. So we've got kind of a maximum of around 24 watt TDP here, but after a while it will come on down to 20 watts. Either way, I'm seeing some great performance out of this game. 900p low medium mix FSR set to performance. We're seeing averages of around 86 FPS with this game. And you know, we had to test out Cyberpunk 2077. I'm at 1080p low settings with FSR set to performance. And I'm just at the low preset. Most of the time with these iGPUs, I go in and turn everything down to the lowest setting. But with this here, I'm seeing the same kind of performance at 30 watts that I do on the ROG Ally with everything turned to low. So that RAM is definitely helping out here, and once I can post some benchmarks, I'll show you exactly how much more performance we're getting out of this unit just from adding that much faster RAM. But one way I can really tell that we're seeing a nice little jump in performance over the original is with one of my favorite racing games. This is Forza Horizon 5, medium settings, 1080p, no FSR. APU is boosting up to 19 watts, and I'm seeing an average of around 93 FPS. And this is at medium 1080 with no FSR. One thing that I really tried on the original ROG Ally was to get this up to a constant 120. And what I'm going to do here is just take this all the way up. I don't think we're going to be able to do it at 1080, but just seeing what this thing can do right now with this game, I think at 900p, we'll be able to lock this at 120. Which is going to be really awesome. Now, not a lot of people are going to want to kill that much battery playing this game, but personally, I don't mind, and we've got a much larger battery on the X. So yeah, that's something I'll definitely be testing out in my next video. I would love to run this at 120 on a handheld using battery power. The new cooling system they implemented here is actually really interesting. They were able to slim these fans down, they've got more blades, but they offer up to 10% more airflow. And the reason they needed to slim these down was to make more room for that 80 watt hour battery. But they've also added that third vent. And if you take a look at the way they've designed these new fans, it's got an extra outlet, which actually brings air into the chassis in between the motherboard and the LCD panel up front, keeping that display a lot cooler. And with this one, they've added that ROG dust filter in the rear. So far, I've been having a great time with the new ROG Ally X. It is a bit thicker, a bit heavier, but for good reason. I mean, we've got a much larger battery. It's a lot more comfortable. I think we've got much better I/O up top here. And with that USB 4 being 40 gig protocol, I'm going to be doing some videos on eGPUs, so keep an eye on the channel. The D-pad and the analog sticks are much better than the original. I mean, overall, they did a really good job with these upgrades. It would have been really nice to have an OLED panel and a new, more powerful APU, but I guess they're going to be saving that for the ROG Ally 2. I'd love to know your thoughts. Is this something you're going to be upgrading to? Did you skip the original ROG Ally? Are you excited about this? Are you going to skip this one? And once I'm able to post benchmarks and battery life, I will do that. But in the meantime, I've got more videos planned. If there's anything else you want to see running on the ASUS ROG Ally X, let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in picking one of these up, pre-orders are now live over on Best Buy. I'll leave a link for that in the description. But that's it for my first look at the ROG Ally X. And like always, thanks for watching.